Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Quebec in Canada and we're going to revisit Brasserie Dieu du Ciel and have a taste of their Rescousse alt beer. And I believe recently they've actually changed the label of this one, so it now has a brown bear on it. I've got one of the older bottles, but I'm sure it's still the same beer from what I've looked at. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll take you through a very kind of brief history of the brewery. Just a very short one, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to the other reviews that I've done from these guys and will do in the near future. So anyway, to tell you about Brasserie Dieu du Ciel. Dieu du Ciel started as a brew pub in Saint-Jérôme, Quebec, with Jean-François Gravel at the helm, and apparently he has no formal brewing training and he learned to brew beer simply through his home brewing experiments, trial and error essentially, but the beers that he's producing, I will say from my experience, are pretty damn good. But Jean-François came up with the name in 1993 to describe his home-brewed beers, and the literal translation of Dieu du Ciel from French to English, it is literally in God in heaven, but it really means the same as an English-speaking person saying oh my god. But apparently there's a certain boldness in the name of the brewery because the Quebecois culture was dominated for a while by the clergy and religion and the traditional Belgian style brewing as well, so it's actually kind of a sort of pioneering name, or a kind of middle finger at the establishment if you like, the name of this brewery, so it's quite cool in that regard. But the craft beer scene has been expanding in Canada over the past few years and Quebec has been performing very well in this area. Quebecois are, the Quebecois beers really are excellent. I've tried one or two of these now, McCausland and also these guys, and these are probably the two most well-known ones, but a lot of beer that comes out of Quebec is just, it's top-notch stuff. But since Dieu du Ciel opened in 1998, they've brewed a large assortment of over 70 different types of beers. Their first brew pub is in Montreal and it has over 15 beers on tap at any one time, and apparently there's also an apartment above the brew pub that visitors can rent, and there's now a second brew pub at the brewery in Saint-Jérôme as well. And at the moment they do have a range, if you look on their website, as I said, the link's below, they do have a range of 22 different bottled beers. So to move on to the actual tasting of this beer itself, this guy is a 5.3% alt beer. This guy was brewed, apparently the first time this guy was brewed was in the Montreal brew pub back in 2010, so it's you know, it's maybe about 4 or 5 years old now, but apparently it's very good. As I said, they have changed the label of this guy. I'll just bring up the camera, let you have a look. This guy has the kind of fish on it, but the new label, I'm sure, if I remember correctly, it does have either a brown or a black bear on it, but it's definitely a bear. And as you can see, there's the sort of St. Peter's angel on the bottle cap of this one. These guys are twist tops as well. I'll just read the commercial description of for this one for you. It was actually quite cool when I was reading it. It says, La Rescousse, which translates to English as To the Rescue, is a noble alt beer that celebrates life in all its diversity. Malty up front with accents of toasted bread, the well-balanced hops provide a tongue-tingling finish to give this copper ale with mahogany highlights its freshness, complexity and unique character. Dieu du Ciel brewers will donate 11 cents for every bottle sold to Fondation de la Faune du Québec in support of its efforts to save endangered species such as the wolverine, the copper red horse and the western chorus frog. Liberté, égalité, biodiversité. Leave indifference behind and make the difference. And it says rescousse.org, so there is a website you can actually go and have a look at, and it tells you about the sort of charitable things that have gone towards this beer. So it's actually quite cool in that regard. They're doing a bit of philanthropy with it, so I'll put the link to that in the description for you below as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting. If I remember right, this is a twisty cap, but it may not want to open, so I might have to pull out the bottle opener. Ah, there we are. I just couldn't get a grip of it without my trusty sleeve. So there we are. As you can see, a little bit of smoke just on the opening. If I smell that when it's pouring, you can really smell the caramel in this guy. Just sugar up the last little bit and see if I can get a bit more of a head on it. And there you are. So as you can see, it's poured a really nice kind of coppery mahogany colour, and you can really smell the bread and the caramel off that as it just sits there in the glass. So if I bring it up to you, it really, I'm not even paying too much attention to the smell, but I can tell you the caramel aromas coming off of this guy are beautiful. So if I bring this up to the camera here, you can see there's a half finger of a kind of frothy, creamy coloured head, not white, more of a creamy colour, but not quite beige. There are some bigger bubbles in there, but mainly a frothy white head. If I put my fingers behind it as well, you can see it's not transparent. I'd say the colour is a sort of ruby, mahogany colour beer, actually, a sort of coppery ruby colour, definitely more not quite as brown as mahogany. It definitely has more of a kind of ruby tinge to it, but it looks really, really nice anyway, and that's the main thing. The carbonation, there's quite a few little bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head there, but you can see just a teeny little bit of sediment in the bottom of the glass, but looks a very, very nice beer, so I'm sure it will taste very, very good as well. So in terms of the aroma with this guy, oof. Yeah, as I was saying, big caramel malt base on this one. Definitely toasted as well. You can really pick up a lot of toasted element to this beer. But a big, nice, it might even be a sort of rye bread malt base on this one. There's definitely a little bit of sort of earthiness or kind of cereal element to the aroma with this guy. But it's a big aroma with that. But it's definitely a nice big bready malt base. As I said, maybe a kind of rye breadish malt base. There's definitely a cereal element to the aroma. But you've got some nice caramel malts in there too. Definitely a bit toasted as well. Maybe even you can smell a little teeny bit of sort of coffee-ish in there, but it might just be the toastedness coming out. But there's a bit of earthiness in there too that you can pick up, kind of in the top of the nose. But definitely an earthy element from the hops. And you can pick up just a little bit of a kind of almost slightly stone fruit element. It doesn't smell like an alt beer that I remember from Germany. I stayed in Germany for about 6 months when I was doing some studying there. And I don't remember an alt beer actually tasting like this, but I'm sure, I don't care what style they say it is as long as it tastes good, that's just me. But it smells really nice, so without further ado, this is the Rescousse beer from Dieu du Ciel in Quebec, Canada. Cheers. Now that is really, really nice. As I said, not quite sure whether it kind of fits in with the German alt beer style, if you like, but it tastes really good, and that's the main thing for me. Yeah, now it definitely has the big malty presence that a German alt beer would have, and the big malty bready characters. This beer is really, really good, and as I've said in the other reviews I've done from Dieu du Ciel, anything you get from these guys will not disappoint you. Their beer is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, you've got a nice big bready malt base. There's a little bit of cereal in there, which makes me want to say it's more of a sort of rye bread or a German black bread kind of malt base on there. It's got a really interesting malt base, this guy. There is a definite element of toasting as well. You're getting a mix, you're almost getting a sort of toasted caramel, but there is an element of almost a little bit of coffee in there too. But as you move into the hoppy section of the beer, it becomes more earthy, so there's that kind of darker, earthier, sort of smoky kind of tone to it. It's got quite an interesting combination of flavours with this guy. Yeah, so you've got a nice kind of sweet bread base in the middle of the tongue. Around the edges you're getting some of the earthy character, the sort of dark earthy character. Maybe even, as I say, just a little bit of coffee in there, but very mild, nowhere near the likes of what you would get from a porter or something like that. Just a little bit of kind of dark coffee-ish flavour in there. But it's definitely a nice kind of sweet caramel malt base, a little bit of toasted character, and you've got that nice kind of cereally rye bread in there underneath. It's a really nice mix of flavours, this beer. I'm even picking up just a little bit of a kind of nutty flavour in the beer as well, right in the middle of the tongue. It's very complex, this one, so as I say with a couple of my reviews, this guy's a very complex beer, so just take a little bit of time and try and take in all the different flavours that you're getting from this beer, because there's a lot on offer in this one. Yeah, big mix, a nice roasted caramel flavour in there, some kind of rye, sort of rye bread and cereal in there that just covers the middle of the tongue. A little bit of nutty flavour as well. Around the edges you're getting sort of the earthy hop character, which is quite interesting. There is a little bit of fruitiness to this one, maybe a kind of dried fruit, just a little kind of mild one. It's not quite as sharp as you would expect from like raisins or something like that. It's maybe more of a kind of figgy, sort of stone fruit flavour you're getting from this one, but you just get a little bit of that at the front of the tongue. There's a definite sort of slight stone fruit presence in there. I would want to say it's a kind of figgy flavour that would come out of this guy. Yeah. Definitely getting some sort of figgy flavour, sort of stone fruity flavour at the front of the tongue. You get just a little oil, like kind of little oily bubble that comes forward and gives you that nice little fruity flavour. But around the back edges of the tongue, you're getting the roasty, kind of earthy elements that are coming from the hops there. So there's a whole, as I said, there's a whole host of flavours available in this beer. So just take a bit of time to kind of have a go at it. It's 5.3% actually, but I've got a feeling it might just be the earthy character coming out, but I can pick up just a little bit of alcohol warmth from this guy, but it might just be mixing in well with these kind of caramel malt flavours. In terms of the mouthfeel of this guy, it's definitely mid-bodied, maybe even pushing the full-bodied bit actually, but just because the flavour is so big. It's got a nice smooth carbonation, but at the same time, what's interesting about this beer that I've never thought about is that it comes from Quebec, and one thing I've noticed with French craft beers, they do have this very wet mouthfeel, but they certainly don't lack in flavour, and this is the same kind of feel that I'm getting from this guy. It has quite a wet mouthfeel, but there's certainly no lack of flavour. It's easy drinking this beer despite it being quite full-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth, but it's got a nice sweetness to it, and it does have a really kind of interesting earthy bitterness to it. Overall, it's a really, really nice beer. As I said in a couple of times through the tasting section, I'm not sure quite how well it fits into the sort of German style of the Alp beers, but the main thing is that the beer tastes good, and it definitely does that. So maybe it's not quite a German Alp beer, but it is a pretty damn awesome beer. I really like this one, and when I do eventually make it over to Montreal in Canada, or Saint-Jérôme, wherever I do end up, Quebec anyway, I will definitely seek out this guy to try on tap. It's a beautiful, beautiful beer, and if you do like a big bready and big caramel malty beer, this is definitely one you want to check out. And the hoppy elements, the earthy character, and the nice little fruit in there, that's really interesting as well, so it's definitely worth checking out. But anyway, I've enjoyed doing my third review from Dieu du Ciel for this one, so I will be doing another one or two of these for you in the very near future. Please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it. I always like reading your comments, and please recommend to me some other Canadian beer review breweries to have a look at as well. I will be going over to Canada at some point, so I will be doing more reviews. But please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I will catch you soon with my other one, and there will be more Canadian reviews to come. Cheers!